Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello. Yes, it's me. I'm back, Laurence Fox, and I'm back for good every Friday night here on GB News at 7 p.m. Hopefully for a bit of fun, fierce and fearless debate. Coming up, as England kick off in the World Cup, I'll tell you why I couldn't care less and why that actually makes me sad. We'll have a mayor debate about Sadiq Khan's latest penguin-saving mission. Plus, we will talk trans with former boxing promoter Kelly Maloney. In typical GB News fashion, I want to hear from you, so get in touch. Email me at gbviews, at gbnews, or tweet me at LozzaFox. The more you disagree with me, the better. First, though, the news with Bethany Elsey.
Laurence, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey, here to bring you up to date from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has said he has enormous respect for nurses, but their pay demands of 19% are simply unaffordable. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December in their first national strike in over a century. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says he's hopeful they can find a resolution.
I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation, and that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise. And I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable, and that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government is shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
Meanwhile, teachers in Scotland will strike for a further 16 days next year in a dispute over pay. The Educational Institute of Scotland say the consecutive days of action split across every council in the country will happen in January and February. It's after yesterday's strike closed nearly all primary and secondary schools. In other news, a government advisor on immigration has warned against proposals to reduce the number of international students coming to the UK, warning it could bankrupt universities. The Prime Minister is considering restricting foreign student admissions to top universities and cracking down on the number of dependents they can bring. It's after net migration to the UK reached a record 500,000 in the past year. The Foreign Secretary has announced a new support package for Ukraine as the country is still experiencing blackouts after the latest round of Russian airstrikes. During his first official trip to Kyiv, James Cleverly pledged 35 more emergency vehicles and a further £3 million to help rebuild the country.
Ultimately, I think it's incredibly important that the UK demonstrates to the Ukrainian people, who are bearing the brunt of this brutality from Russia, that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them through our military support, through our humanitarian support, through our economic support, but also through the visible support.
And to the World Cup, England's match against the USA has just kicked off in Qatar. England supporters have gathered at a fan zone in London to watch the game. They'll be hoping the lads secure a 3-point win and a place in the knockouts. Meanwhile, over back in Qatar, they are out of the World Cup after losing to Senegal and Ecuador in their 2 opening games. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Laurence Fox.
Good evening and welcome to the first ever Laurence Fox News show. Whilst it may not bode well for the ratings that show number 1 kicks off at the exact same time as the English ball chasers are kneeling in supplication to something St Gareth of the Waistcoat calls inclusivity, it at least gives me a reason to share my time with you rather than sitting through their silly, hypocritical virtue signalling. I reckon it would be better if they did the hacker or something, but then that would be cultural appropriation, which is very bad apparently. In the days before the ball chasers became political activists, I was a passionate England fan. I remember watching Italian 90, emotions fired by Nessun Dorma blaring out of the telly box, lying sweatily on the sofa in the throes of glandular fever as Gary Lineker, pre-canonisation, slid the ball elegantly past Pat Bonner into the net. I remember it like it was yesterday. The strange look which came over his face, a look of bewilderment, of joy, or as it turned out, the look of a man who had just followed through. And sadly, St Gary has followed through pretty much non-stop ever since then. I remember the 4-1 against Holland in Euro 96, the 5-1 drubbing of the Germans in Germany. Football tournaments were the greatest biennial gift to the nation, bringing us all together, right up until any penalty shootout, when it was mostly game over. But one thing football wasn't particularly back then was hugely political. More recently, things have begun to change. I found myself cheering every Italian penalty in the last Euros as the England penalty takers, their minds no doubt subsumed with colonial guilt, having begun the game kneeling to the housing corporation formerly known as Black Lives Matter, played a game of who could take the worst penalty. Perhaps we let the Italians win out of a strong sense of this inclusivity St Gareth of the Southgate harps on about continuously. The stunning bravery of this modern England team never ceases to humble and amaze me. Special mention to St Harry of the Cane for his revolutionary demonstration of solidarity with the gay community of Qatar for wearing this gorgeous £520,000 symbol of resistance and defiance. Only Lewis Hamilton's rainbow helmet in Bahrain has ever moved me closer to tears. Finally, we will be discussing Sadiq Turpin's cunning ruse to make sure you can never afford to drive again. The great unwashed who refuse to do what they are told and continue to exercise dangerous levels of independent thought by choosing to drive their own cars instead of taking public transport, walking or cycling in the rain to work, are clogging up the roads in their disgusting white vans, adding vital extra journey time to Sadiq Turpin's multiple Range Rover convoy as he tweets sagely about the climate emergency soon to be wrought by the sun monster if we do not decolonise our cars. Vehicular insurrectionists will now have to pay an extra £12.50 if they made the mistake of living within the M25. Now that's before the congestion charge and impossibly unnavigable low-traffic neighbourhoods. Taxation in the name of salvation. If Sadiq can't get you out, he will price you out, all for your own good. But don't worry, there is some good news. I'm back, and I'm going to be extremely well behaved. That's exactly what I told the producers when they offered me this job. So, tonight, I'm going to ask you, how many LGBTQ lives have been saved by St Harry of the Cane's rainbow timepiece? Email me at gbviews at GBNews or tweet me at LozzaFox. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, announced today plans to go ahead with expanding the ultra-low emission zone to cover all of Greater London from August next year. An estimated 160,000 cars entering the ULEZ zone will have to pay the daily £12.50 fee, despite 80% of people affected opposed to the plans in the public consultation. Sadiq Turpin says that the cleaner the air will benefit around 5 million people. With me for the mother of all mayoral debates, our former Mayor Ken Livingstone and fellow Mayor, not failure, we both won, Sean Bailey. Right, Ken, you started this low emission zone stuff. What do you reckon?
Well, it was back in 1982 I introduced the low emission zone in central London. The number of people driving in went down 12%. The number of people being killed went down by about 12%. And the pollution and emissions went down by about 12%. And so if this reduces the number of people driving into London, it's going to save lives. Because, I mean, in the 8 years that Boris Johnson was mayor, he cancelled all my plans to extend this and do this a lot earlier. And in his 8 years, 76,000 Londoners died from air pollution. Thousands of them had voted for him, and it killed them.
How do you know, sorry, just before I come to Sean, how do you know 76,000 died from air pollution?
Well, I don't know, there would have been data coming out, this is years ago now.
Recorded on their death certificate.
I'm 77 years old, my memory's trapped, sorry.
All right. Sean, what do you make of it?
Look, the first thing we have to say is Londoners have spoken. They said no. Over 60% of the people who voted for this said no. If you remove all the campaign groups, it actually goes up to 68%. And let's be clear, they didn't do this unreasonably. The mayor's own study used these words, a negligible change in air quality in out of London. And what Ken did is markedly different from what Sadiq's doing. What Ken did was stop one of the busiest cities in the world choking to death. What Sadiq is doing is charging people out in the suburbs who don't have an alternative to pay £12.50. And the important thing here, it is the poorest people, it is the small businesses, it is the charities who will be paying this because they can't renew their vehicles, and they're the ones who will be closed down. His own figures say that something like 20% of businesses can just go missing. And what's important about that, they're the small businesses that give local children a start. If you've got a kid at home now who isn't crushing in school, where do they go? They go to the local whatever to start a job. Sadiq Khan has just closed that business down.
That's a good point. So, Ken, they're saying that it's £4,500 extra for someone who lives within all London boroughs to drive their car every year in the middle of a cost of lockdown crisis. Surely you're looking to help the poorest in society as a former Labour member.
But help the poorest by getting more cars, increasing public transport. I mean, literally, when I introduced the congestion charge, and that number of cars went down by 12%, the number of people getting on the bus and the tube went up. And, I ended up buying 8,000 new buses and getting rid of the 5,000 crapped-out old ones. If you provide good public transport and make it cheaper than driving a car, people will switch. And for me, the crucial thing, because I'm 77 now, I could be really vulnerable to the air pollution that we've got in London. And as I said, thousands of people are dying from it all the time. So I support what he's doing. I just wish he'd done it a lot sooner.
But doesn't Sean make a good point that it was a different era
It's
back then?
It's not only a different era, it's a different place. Let's take Ken's point. Ken is correct. If you provide good public transport, people will use it. Outer London is notorious for having poor transport links, absolutely dismal transport links. And under this mayor, they have gotten worse. Just the other day, he proposed bus cuts. You turned on those bus cuts and then tried to sell himself as some kind of saviour. He saved us from him. But the important point there, they showed two things. One, there is no alternative in out of London. And what out of Londoners do, they make London viable. We live far out. I say that as someone who's moved far out in London. We make the big journeys. We pay the big public transport costs. And then he punishes us with an additional cost. And here's the key point about this. We don't just exist in London. There's people from outside of London. Your person who does your hair, your florist, your plumber. If they have to pay, what will they do? They'll just pass the cost along and it'll make London even more expensive to live in. This is a cost of living payment forced on poor people by Sadiq Khan. And if he doesn't U-turn, then we should take him to task, because there's an issue now. Because of the way in which he did the consultation, he could potentially be taken to court, because there's a legal thing around a consultation where it has to show that you didn't preempt anything and that you gave it due consideration. He made this decision within 1 hour. If he expects us to believe he got the results from the consultation and an hour later made such a big decision, a £200 million decision, I might add, right? We're meant to believe that. I think there could be a legal challenge coming.
But when I introduced the congestion charge, the majority of Londoners were opposed to it. But once it worked, that switched. And I think if Sadiq goes ahead and does this and it works, there'll be huge support for it.
Well, it's going to work, isn't it? Because he's going to get richer. But what we're talking about is we're talking about people right at the end of they've spent their rainy day money.
Yep.
They spent that for 2 years. Their wages aren't increasing. There's record inflation.
Yep.
People are at the very end of their tether. To throw a $4,500 bill at them on top of an energy bill, on top of everything else. I thought Sadiq Khan and I thought Labour stood for the poorest in society.
They do, and that means making public transport better, keeping fares down. When I brought in the congestion charge, I also cut the fares. That boosted things. And the simple fact is we need to be getting people out of their cars onto public transport.
Why should someone not be able to choose when they want?
You and I could both be dead from air pollution.
Sorry, 1 second, Sean. Sorry, mate. I don't believe, I can't live in doomsday land. I can't believe in some monster land. I totally acknowledge the fact that man has an effect on the climate and all this stuff. But when you look at the improvements made to car technology and all this stuff, is this not the Mayor of London turning around and going, if I can't get you out of your car, I will price you out of your car, so that you acknowledge, so you do what me, Sadiq Khan's ideological vision of New London is. And
if you can afford to buy a car, how come you can't afford to pay the congestion charge?
Because a congestion charge costs more. Travelling around in London costs more. If you're living out of London...
Not more than buying a car.
I'm afraid it does.
$4,500 a year.
You ask anybody who lives beyond Zone 3 what it's like to go across their borough and they'll start telling you nightmares. But here's the important thing. It will deliver nothing. His own report uses the word negligible. And if he really wanted to help people travel around London, he'd do as Ken says. He'd reduce transport costs, but he hasn't. He's about to spend £200 million on cameras that will go out of date. He's about to spend £110 million on a scrappage scheme, which sounds great until you find out he wanted the government to spend £180 million on it. When it's his turn, he only spends £110 million on it. And most of all, he broke a promise. He told Londoners if there was overwhelming opposition to this, he would scrap the scheme. 68% people against it, particularly the people who are going to be affected by it, is overwhelming. He has not done what he's done. He's lied. He needs a U-turn on this to make Londoners' pockets last a bit longer.
But look, when I brought the congestion charge in, the majority were opposed to it. But once it worked, they changed.
Well,
and when Sadiq Khan does this, I suspect within a few weeks the majority will say, we back it.
No, because it won't work. Let's be clear.
It will work.
Let's be clear, Ken. What you did was address one of the hot spots in all of Europe. Yeah, that hotspot does not exist in outer London. It simply is not true. What you did, Ken, was help transport happen in inner London. There is no link in outer London.
But
there's no tube.
Congestion all over London.
Ken, you need the final word. Come on, you have the final words. Sell it to me why you want to make everyone poorer.
Well, I don't want to make anyone poor. I want to save the lives because, as I said,
it's negligible. Sean said it.
Could all die from air pollution. Thousands do every year. I want that tackled. And one way of doing that, actually, whilst allowing people to drive, is get more electric vehicles. And
so why didn't he
pushing
do that?
us in that direction.
No, he isn't.
And doing that and planning to get more charging points.
No, he's
and so
not.
on.
He could have spent that £200 million on buses. He could have made a whole bus fleet electric, zero emissions. He could have given us more charging points. He could have made it. He could give 60+ people back the right to travel before 9 o'clock.
He could have done all those things.
He could have done.
He could have done all those
We've got to wrap
if
up.
the government hadn't cut spending on public transport.
Thank you very much. We've got to wrap up. Ideology ahead of practicality, I think, is what we've learned here. Thank you, Sean Bailey and Ken Livingston.
In my life.
Toodle pip. Right. Well, coming up next, I will debate whether St Gareth of the Southgate's woke warriors in Qatar should continue to take the knee despite bottling wearing an armband because they're frightened of getting a yellow card. Back soon.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. I've heard reports that England did indeed take the knee and the USA didn't, which is slightly strange. So England kneeled to St. George Floyd and America didn't. Strange. Anyway, let's go back to the audience question. One viewer on Twitter said there's no point in blaming Harry Kane. Place the blame where it really belongs. Where does it belong? Explain that to me. John says, how much further have women's rights in Qatar been improved with the LGBTQ plus nonsense and protests? Exactly. Another viewer, we have no more right to tell others how to run their country as they have to tell us how to run ours. By doing so, we become hypocrites. I do agree with this, actually, this idea. That who knows everything about Qatar? OK, we can disagree with the gay and lesbian policies, but we don't know the cultural context of what they're doing. And actually what we're doing is we're just recolonising them with wokedom. So I don't think it's any of our business. Ashley on Twitter says, why are you so scared of rainbows? I'm not scared of rainbows, Ashley. I just want them to be inclusive and for all of us. Phil says, only time will tell. Knock, knock, nice one, Phil. Right, now, as we speak, England are playing their second game of this year's World Cup in the Middle East against the US. Before the first game against Iran, they dropped to their knees in a gesture against racism, or actually inclusivity, as Gareth said. Joining me in a pub in Sherburn in Elmet is GB News reporter Anna Riley. Anna, how is the atmosphere? I don't think she is joining us in the pub. Oh, she's there. Hi, Anna.
There's an electric... Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you doing?
Hello, yes, I'm in the Oddfellow Arms in North Yorkshire and there's an electric atmosphere. It's still 0-0, but we're hoping to get a goal in soon for England. Is there anything more British than coming into the pub on a Friday night and watching the England game? Us Brits love a sports event. What's bigger than the World Cup? And I hear that football's coming home. That's the message here in Yorkshire.
Take me home, take me back to Yorkshire, that's what I say. Right, now joining me now is Femi Nylander, an actor and a writer. Hi Femi, how are you doing?
Not too bad, how's it going?
Yeah, good man. What do you think about England players taking the knee?
I think it's perfectly fine. I think that protesting against... one moment, sorry. I think protesting against racism is... they have every right to do so. And I think that they're using the same arguments as they did in the past. When they did it in the UK, in the Premier League, they were talking about domestic racism and they were talking about the stuff that was going on in England at the time. Now they're in a country which has a lot of problems with migrant labour. Most of the stadiums for the current World Cup have been built using migrant labour, which has come from the Philippines, come from India, come from Bangladesh, and a lot of people have actually died building those stadiums. And they have a global platform, and there's nothing wrong with them taking the knee. I don't think there's any issue there. Do you have an issue with it?
If they're protesting or making some sort of gesture about the treatment of migrant workers and LGBTQ rights in Qatar, why turn up at all and play? Why not make the most powerful gesture of all and just not refuse to partake in the World Cup?
Well, I think some countries have talked about possibly dropping out of FIFA. Was it Denmark that discussed the option of dropping out of FIFA? And I think that were a very powerful country like the UK, where the Premier League is held, to take a stand and boycott the World Cup, it may well have an effect on helping to tackle the corruption within FIFA and some of the issues we've seen around migrant rights. Things like boycotts are very powerful, but England hasn't chosen to do that, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately necessarily, but it hasn't chosen to do that. Were it to do that, it may well have an effect. It hasn't chosen to do that, but saying that someone hasn't gone all the way and therefore they can't take any action at all is just a slippery slope argument. That's like many people have issues with the migrant rights, but they'll still watch the occasional match. And I'm not criticizing them because everyone engages to the level at which they will engage. I can still criticize the migrant rights things, even if I do decide to watch a match and support England or support Nigeria or support any team.
Sure, but Gareth Southgate was explicit in what he said in the press conference, which is that they're not kneeling against this. They're not kneeling about the migrant workers. They're not kneeling against LGBTQ plus rights. They're kneeling for what he calls inclusivity. Can you tell me what inclusivity is, please, Femi?
As far as I wasn't aware of that statement, but the word inclusivity, as far as I know, means including people. There is times when you exclude people, and there are times when you include people. Segregation was a matter of excluding people. When you take two groups and you say you're excluded, you're not allowed to engage in this. If you are including people, and I think the World Cup is an example of inclusion because people from all over the world, they come together and they mix, and people of different cultures meet each other. It's unfortunate that this year's World Cup has been marred by so many issues. But yeah, including people from an LGBTQ background, including people from minority groups, including people who have different views, of different backgrounds, and making sure that everyone is represented, because humanity is very diverse.
Qatar doesn't, sorry to interrupt you, Qatar doesn't include gay and lesbian people. And that's part of the structure of its society. So why is Gareth, if they're kneeling for inclusivity, why on earth are they there? It's like if our values and our standards in the West...
2 minutes ago, you were saying that we're recolonizing them with wokeness by trying to press LGBT rights on them, which I thought was a very interesting choice of phrase, because saying that we disagree with some of their policies is not quite the same as colonization. Colonization was a very brutal and very destructive process where we actually went and forced something on there. If we were to drop...
Were there any good things about the colonial... Were there any good things about colonization?
Pardon?
Were there any good things about the empiring the colonies? Or was it all terrible?
Very few comparatively to the bad things. Very few comparatively to the bad. Like, there are many more bad things than good things. But regardless, if on one hand you're saying we're recolonizing them with wokeness and we shouldn't be, but then on the other hand, when England says, well, let's take a stand about this, you're saying that Qatar is a poor example of human rights because of the. So you tell me, Laurence, do you support Qatar, or do you support Qatar's right to imprison people for being gay, or do you think that it's a bad thing that they do that? Personally,
I think I don't think it's a good thing that anyone should be prejudiced for being gay or anything like that, but I also don't think that it's my country and I have a right to make up the laws. So therefore I would turn around and say it's highly hypocritical for the England team to make these giant £520,000 timepiece gestures in the same way Lewis Hamilton does,
done that plenty
in
of
order
times
to
in
turn
recent
around
history.
and I think I think the pundits getting paid to turn up. I think the cowardice of Harry Kane to refuse to wear the rainbow armband, the One Love armband, because he doesn't want a yellow card. I think it shows how shallow and pathetically virtuous this is. In the same way as I would add to what you say.
Laws in a country. When you say it's not your right to go in and make up the laws of the country, do you think then that when England invaded Libya, helped France and America invade Libya, and overthrew the guy there, Gaddafi, because they didn't like his policies, or when we went into Iraq and we invaded Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein because we didn't like his policies, or any of the foreign interventions that we make all over the world, all the time, in other countries, because we don't like what they're doing. How do you think that compares to someone wearing an armband saying, I disagree with this, or wearing a T-shirt with a rainbow on, which is not really in any effective way going to have an impact on what Qatar does? It's just saying a statement.
I was talking more, first of all, to answer your first question, I think England's the West, America and its allies' invasion of Iraq was despicable and based on a lie. And that is awful. And I think that when we try and export certain parts of our values overseas is a terrible idea. But I think that the cowardice displayed by the England captain to refuse to wear a One Love of what? Armband because he doesn't want a yellow card, goes to show how hollow his support of these communities is. And it's just a virtue signal.
Taking the knee, but then backing out. If you are going to do something...
Why don't footballers take the knees to footballers who rape their girlfriends? Why don't they do that?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying protests have repercussions. And for the England team to say, we're going to do this, and then for FIFA to say, there's going to be a repercussion, you might get a red card, and then to back out of that and say, well, we're no longer going to do that, means that they aren't actually ready to engage in the protest. If I'm going to do a protest of something, and then someone says you might go to jail for doing that protest, and then I don't show up at the protest, then protests have risks. And so there is something that is kind of like, okay, well, we can't do the thing which might have a repercussion, so we're just going to take the knee instead because that's not going to have any repercussion. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't take the knee. That doesn't mean that them taking the knee isn't something. So I agree with you that there's something questionable about stating I'm going to wear this armband and then not wearing this armband because of the fact that, and I think FIFA as well has a role to play in saying, in censoring people and saying you're not allowed to express your political views in a very, very, very benign way. So I think FIFA has something wrong here. There is some, as you say, cowardice expressed, but that isn't to say that taking the knee, which has a long history, well, not a long history, a very short history, it's only since Colin Kaepernick, but has a history within sports as it clearly represents anti-racism. It has a certain value to it. There's nothing wrong with them doing that. If we have a problem with them pulling out of wearing the armband, that's something which we can talk about separately, but that doesn't mean I have a problem with them taking the knee.
Well, actually, weirdly, I think in this conversation, I've understood that we're not miles apart in terms of some of the things that don't work. I just think that taking the knee is supplication and always has been. But it's been a real pleasure to hear your nuanced perspective, which is great to hear. So thank you very much, Femi. Right. Coming up, is there an end to cancel culture? Can we cancel culture? This we shall discuss in a few minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Now, you may have heard that I have been cancelled from the acting world, sort of, save for the most anti-woke movie, My Son Hunter, hence why I'm here, and I'm very pleased to. But to discuss cancel culture and Hollywood, the bastion of wokery, and how we can live in a world with differing views, is American entertainment mogul, lawyer and documentary maker Stephen Machat. Stephen, is there an end in sight for cancel culture?
No. That's the history of mankind. What happens is, I study history, and I'm known as a metaphysicist, so I study energy and what comes at you. So what we do, mankind's done for our entire time here on Earth. You know, I write books about this. What we do is, so we live in a balanced world, so we want people to go this way or that way. And when we're tilting the seesaw, we get everyone to go there, but we do that by getting your energy up. So we need to get something that upsets more than 50%. So therefore, now all of a sudden, an idea or an energy starts ruling the roost, ruling the nation. So it becomes culture. And then we have people that go against culture to change the rule. We're a system that we just don't get it.
But
we don't live in balance.
Isn't that what art was for originally, is to challenge the culture?
Yeah.
So shouldn't art be the area where this cancel culture is being attacked most vociferously, because it's stopping people expressing themselves, and art is expression.
Here's what I'm older, and I look at my life now as an elder, and I'm honored that I'm here to do this, and I'm not going to stop. Look at the word earth. Where did that come from? Right? E-A-R-T-H. Get rid of E, get rid of H, what are you left with? Art. Look at heart. H-E-A-R-T. The symbols are there. These are words. These are talisman. The game is art. What is the art? We came here to play. We being a consciousness that fell into a body called Earthlings. We came here to develop. We came here to discover love, to understand what love's about, the ramifications on a high and a low, and a balance. And if you learn how to balance your energies, you'll live a longer life. And that's the purpose.
So, very quickly in the time that we have left, what would your advice to someone who wanted to become an artist be now? Would you ask them to go full-fledged into the world or to keep their mouth shut so they can work?
No, go for it. You have one chance. You don't know if you have more chances. My son and I had a record label. It was one of the biggest record labels, and he ended up dead, you know, because he got caught up with this band called Young Lean, and my son couldn't handle the energy. And I blame myself. You know, we had a huge record label. He had everything he ever wanted. And you never know. But the truth is, I experienced life with him. We went to 23 countries. I produced music all over the world. I produced some of your top stars here. I was their lawyer, their manager, their packager. I was whatever I had to do to get that thing heard. And what I'll tell everyone listening, if you have a dream, you need a team. If you don't have a team, you will not live your dream. You could play golf all day. Golf is not life. You need a team.
If you have a dream, get a team.
Yep, no team, no dream.
An absolute pleasure to speak to you, and I'm very sorry to hear about your son.
No, thank you. And I'm honored to be on your first show.
Thank you so much.
No, you've got good energy. I like you.
Thank you, Stephen.
No, thank you.
Right, coming up, you won't want to miss this. It's me, former boxing promoter Kelly Maloney. In my new feature, we're calling it Dish It Out, but seriously, someone send me a better title than Dish It Out, because Aaron's wrong on this one. Anyway, don't go away, see you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. I have saved the best part of the show till last. Earlier today, I went to talk trans with boxing promoter Kelly Maloney for a chat and a bite to eat of food we didn't eat. All right, babe. How are you?
Yeah, nice to meet you. I've been looking forward to this.
Have you?
Read quite a lot about you.
What? Oh no, bad? All bad?
No, not. Some is bad, some's good. Depends on what side of the spectrum you want to come from.
Yeah.
They're your views.
Yeah. Do you think it's important that people should express their views?
Yeah, I believe in free speech. I believe that we should be able to say what we want, and by meeting and talking, because I'm sure your views and my views are totally different, we will maybe come to some common ground at the end of this conversation.
Well, we both grew up in religious families. You grew up in an Irish Catholic family, didn't you? And I grew up in a religious family, so I'm sure we share some sort of internal workings from our
Some
past.
beatings from the religious orders.
Tell me, so you said you started to feel different about 16, is that right?
No, I felt very different from the age of 3, but I didn't know what it was.
3?
It wasn't until I read the story of April Ashley when I was about 12 years old, and then I realised what I was. But that day they had all different terminology for what we have today. The world just moves on and wording changes.
God, I can't even remember being 3. I probably can somewhere. But so what did you feel at 3? You felt like you wanted to,
No, I just felt different. I didn't know how I felt. I just didn't feel like the other boys, shall we say. But I, obviously being born a boy and having an Irish father.
Trad dad.
That was very sport-minded and, you know, in his own way religious. I just went along with what was expected. And
then, and you lived your whole life essentially, because it took you up to 60.
Up to nearly 60.
Really?
Yeah.
So talk me through how you lived till 60 without...
Well, I saw, as I say, the article of April Ashley. I saw how the British press totally destroyed her and pulled her down from where she was when they discovered in her previous life she was a male. I also read the story of Caroline Crossley, who was the first Bond girl that they discovered was a trans woman, and how that destroyed her and she lost. And I just swore to myself I would never ever admit to it. I would fight it. And obviously, as my career grew in boxing, and you managed the heavyweight champion of the world, I didn't think it was quite a good idea to broadcast how I felt. And so I was always, shall I say, fighting myself, living a double life. I had 2 people in one body.
And what impact does that have on you emotionally? So if you're, you know, it's like anything. If you're trying to keep something secret, and I suppose it must happen with lots of people. That I've got a mate who couldn't come out to his father because he's gay, and his dad was an earl, so he couldn't tell his dad, you know, essentially, I'm not going to be able to provide you with some sons and heirs, and they ended up not speaking for a while. So what does it do to you emotionally, not being able to?
I think mentally it sort of destroys you, but you try to build a life that you can live in. And I was very lucky, you know, I had family and I enjoyed what I'd done. The boxing was if I hadn't had boxing, I think it might have been a different story. You know, I enjoyed that. I mean, I enjoyed doing the deals. I just enjoyed that. It wasn't a job, it was a passion. But part of me wishes I could have done it as Kelly, because I think I'd have been a much better manager and promoter.
Why is that?
Because I think I'd have been more understanding. I think because I was fighting myself, I was a very aggressive and angry little man. You know, made lots of comments I shouldn't have made.
But you probably have to be angry and aggressive when you're dealing with big mega bucks world heavyweight champions and trying to sort out their stuff.
You know, you can always stay a little bit different to the other sharks in the pool.
Should a trans boxer be able to box another? You know, should a trans
We're going to go. Why not just ask the question about trans women in sport? It's much easier than
No, because I'm interested because in boxing it's different,
no,
right?
I don't know the answer to that, but in boxing I do not think so. There are certain sports I would say yes, other sports I would say no. Boxing is definitely one where I don't think it should happen. Trans men, should they be allowed to box men? That should be their choice, but they shouldn't be allowed to box women either, because obviously their body's pumped full of testosterone.
Yeah. So which sports would you go for? Which sports get the Kelly thumbs up?
Darts, snooker.
Darts and snooker. Non-contact sports then?
Yeah, definitely non-contact sports. You know, at the moment it's still a minefield. And if I'm honest, I'm trying to read my way through that minefield, because one day I read, yes, it's okay to take athletics, another day someone will say no. So it's one of the times I hate to say this, but I sit on the fence.
For me, so there's two issues. You see Leah Thomas, who's not a fully transitioned female, who was a male up until recently, beating a lot of biologically female swimmers.
That's again where I probably differ to the trans community. I don't see, when you're in transitioning, that's very difficult. I don't think you should be allowed to take part in any sport until you've fully transitioned, you've lived in that body for so many years, and the hormones have taken, then they should be medically examined. I think that's where we're wrong. The science world are not taking someone at certain age levels and measuring them against biological women.
Yeah, because you look at the girl who came 11th in that situation. You see all these stuff of athletics in America in the sprints and stuff like that. There's lots of girls who've been training their entire lives to try and succeed, and you've got transgender athletes, male to female transgender athletes coming in and taking away female opportunities.
But let's be honest, how many transgender athletes are there?
Not many.
There's
more.
And they're used as a football to kick around, to abuse the community. What we need is proper scientific evidence from both sides. Both sides need to come around the table instead of using social media to attack each other. Both sides need to sit down and discuss it like adults and let the scientists come up with the answers.
But in the meantime, should there not be like an open category or something, so you can have
an open category would be fine. No,
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be a problem with an open category. Then they can choose. But you know, it's just a very hard subject, and I do feel for anyone that is trans and they are into their sport, because it is very hard, because they do feel isolated.
Yeah, and I think that everybody feels, well, obviously not everybody, because you can't speak for everybody, but the vast majority of people feel compassion for everybody else and respect and understanding for the decisions adults make. What are your thoughts on? So you said you were 3 when you began to notice something different. What are your thoughts on what would be an appropriate age of consent for kids to start, or young adults to start saying, right, I think I'm in the wrong body?
Again, that's the choice of the family of the child.
But it's not the choice of the family of the child a lot, because what's happening is kids are going into school, certainly in America, and it's happening more and more here, and saying I'm in the wrong body, and the teachers are letting them live as a different kid in school as they are at home. So the family is not always involved.
Well, no, I don't think that's happening where they live at a certain thing at home and a certain thing at school, because obviously the school will tell the parents how the child is behaving in school, so the parent would know from day one. I've always said this when I do my diversity talks, and I've chatted to families. If the child comes out and says that, just let the child, as if it's natural. The child will find its own way and will be truthful, and if it is a true trans child, that will come through. If it's not, then it will not come through.
Puberty blockers, which is what is the option that you've got there, which are Lupron, which is
I'm not an expert on that subject.
No, but I'm just we're clear that this science, as you say, getting the doctors together, this science is quite it's very new.
Well, some people say the puberty blockers are reversible, some say they're not reversible. So once again, we have this dispute. Again, the medical field have to come together and issue a proper paper that will guide the families, I believe.
But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, but it does, puberty blockers are used to chemically castrate rapists in America, so I imagine they're not that reversible. It's quite new. So in terms of kids, do you understand that, do you think that the explosion in trans kids now...
When you say explosion, it's a small minority. The way you're making it, everyone's going to wake up and be trans the next day. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen like that. You know, that child will know there's something different with them, and hopefully their family will support them. And that's the best you can hope for. I knew, but I had no one to tell at that age.
Yeah, but I would say you're probably more of an exception than the rule. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, you lived a very full life, and then you know, obviously you struggled with what you were struggling with, but you made a decision at a period in your life where you would go, you've experienced a great deal. I just find it really hard to believe that a child who hasn't experienced anything really yet, they're not even independent from their parents, they've not lived a full enough life to really know who they are, can have that capacity to think, and certainly in terms of surgery and stuff like that, irreversible surgery.
You can't have surgery till you're 18, I believe, in this country.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, it's not as if a child that is 4 or 5 says, oh, I feel I'm a boy, I'm a girl. They're not going to have surgery the next day. They've still got a long way to go to that surgery. And they have to go through a number of medical tests. They have to go through a number of psychologists, you know. So it's a long journey. It's a long, painful journey for that person. If I could have my life again, and I was born today, yeah, I would transition a lot earlier.
You would?
Yeah, I think I've missed out a lot. I've had a very full life. I've had a good life, you know. I had a nice family, but deep down, at the end, I was destroying my family, and I was destroying myself and my friends around me because I was living a lie.
Yeah, so I get that, and I totally encourage and support your transition. I just think it's very different from a child doing it with the mental capacity children have. I mean, I still don't make that smart decisions, and I wasn't even making smart decisions until my mid-20s. And they're saying a lot about the development of the male brain, that male brain doesn't really kick in properly until he's about 27.
But we have a female brain in a male body.
You've got a female brain in a male body. Yeah, you do, that's fine, but not when...
But it was there, well, I haven't had a brain transplant, so my brain's been there all the time.
Yeah. But a lot of, as I'm saying, 80% of these kids that are left alone and are not encouraged to transition turn out to be either gay or lesbian.
But there are charities and there are support groups that will help them children and help them families. And I'm sure that some of them that have got started on that journey may have realised it's not exactly the journey they want, and they've stopped. But some have gone all the way and have found real peace in their life and happiness.
Exactly. But what do we do with the ones that have taken drastic medical steps and then regret that?
That's a very small minority if you check the figures on that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, Kira Bell would suggest not, and there would, you know, the Tavistock Clinic is now being closed down, isn't it, as a result of some of the practices that...
Because they've changed how they're operating. There's more regional clinics being opened. And the world will keep changing as we get more young people. You know, people see themselves different. And as long as we respect each other as human beings, what does it matter what we call ourselves? Respect as human beings is more important than a label stuck on somebody.
I don't know whether it's respect that we should be after or whether it's tolerance that we should be after.
Well, a little bit of both then, shall we say.
Well, there's a lot of people I don't respect at all, and but I'll tolerate them, and I won't, but I don't respect them. And I suppose if we're talking about individuality and you're saying that we're all individuals, I agree with you. But then why then does the LGBTQ++ lobby Batman sign, exclamation mark, just decide to lump everybody, gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, two-spirit, all into one community? Do you think it's not being used as a way of taking minority groups and exploiting their vulnerabilities to push a political agenda?
I don't really know, because I'm not a political animal.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and even though we don't agree on the kids stuff, I do agree and respect and encourage your right to be loved and seen for who you are.
I just want to be respected.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the love bit.
You're not worried about the love bit?
No.
Yeah, but we need more love in this world.
I agree to that, but if we start respecting, love will follow it.
You reckon?
I believe so. As
Well,
long as my
yes.
family love me, that's more important. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
Lovely to meet you. Well, that was me, and it is so lovely to be back. Next up is Patrick Christie. See you next week at 7 p.m. on Friday.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently.